Joining me today is the CEO of My SEO Sucks, Chris Porteous. Chris started his career working in business and finance analysis at Goldman Sachs and at a hedge fund. But his passion lies in automation, and at My SEO Sucks, he focuses on building sales funnels and marketing workflow solutions to help his clients. And like me, he's a huge basketball fan. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, Chris. It's great to finally meet you, and I'm glad that you're on our show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
Perfect. So what I'm gonna usually start off with is, tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you're at today, and how did you start your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Like most people, I had no idea, 5 years ago that I would be in the marketing space. Even in university, I kind of didn't really enjoy it. I was more on the finance side. I took a few marketing courses because I had to, not because I wanted to.
Yep.
But yeah, here I am today running a fast scaling SEO agency in Toronto.
So what's your background? Did you go to school, like I mentioned, in business finance, but I know there's certain courses that you took, but why transition? Like what really got you going here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, I went to Laurier for business and then had a specialty in finance
Okay.
and had a great co-op experience. I worked at Goldman Sachs for 8 months back in 2009, I believe.
Okay.
I think oil was at like $150 a barrel and the markets were down about 60%. It was a crazy time. Like I'd walk into the office. There would be you're looking around, there'd just be pink slips kind of on people's desks. Like, oh no, it's gonna be one of those days again. So that was a really fun time kind of being in the industry then. My next co-op term, UBS, again, another great one, great bank, great place to work. Graduated, I did kind of like an internship at a hedge fund. And that manager there still, helps me today with providing feedback, advice, helping me kind of mentor me and help grow my firm. Then kind of I was in the securitization space, did a lot of auto loans, credit cards, things along those lines. And an opportunity came up. I was also on the side, I had a cardboard furniture business,
Okay.
which was a really interesting one. And we grew that. We did kind of work for the CRA, which is the Canada Revenue Agency. We did work for StatsCan. We had the Pan Am Games here in Toronto. We supplied a lot of material and furniture for that. So kind of all over the place, and I really enjoyed that. And one of my friends was asking me if I wanted to handle the SEO for this kind of large law firm in Toronto. I looked at the opportunity. I thought it was awesome, a great way to kind of further develop my marketing skills. And with SEO, it's very technical. You can scale up a lot of those processes. And so I took that position, and from there, I kind of grew into an agency that now we service about 40, 45 clients. We have a fairly large team, really kind of focused now on, the technology side of it we use some machine learning, a little bit of AI. We built our own proprietary systems and software. So yeah, a bit of a journey. 10 years ago, myself, if I was telling myself I'd be in, SEO or digital marketing, I would have laughed. But here we are, and I absolutely love it. And, every day is a new challenge.
Oh, that's awesome. So growing up, did you have any mentors, or did you want to be a business owner kind of, any dreams of being that, or what did you want to do growing up?
Oh yeah, I look back, and I would have, no matter what happened, I probably would have found myself in the same position as a business owner. I shouldn't say this maybe on the podcast, but when I was younger, I think it was maybe 12 or 13 years old. I had a paper route, and I used that money to buy a CD burner.
Okay.
So I was probably one of the first in the neighborhood who had a CD burner. If you guys remember, with PlayStation games and Napster and everything. I think that was my first stint on the entrepreneurial side. And then with that, I used some of that money and I built my first computer, built a website, and I started selling computers online. You could go in, you could pick all the, everything you wanted, customize it, check out. And then I would bike to the computer shop, buy all the parts, and then I would mail it to them. So I was always kind of doing these entrepreneurial ventures. I think now it's turned into something serious and much larger, but I've been doing this since I've been about 12 years old.
That's amazing. Very similar to myself. So I was in paper route boy when I was 9 years old, and really just I think that really started everything. So there's always a story behind how entrepreneurs begin, and typically when it usually starts when they're young, right? And you don't even know that you want to become like that until later on in life, right? So that's amazing. So growing up, I guess, did you have any mentors or people that you kind of looked up to throughout this journey that you're on, in terms of, because for me it looks like you're fairly young, you're probably in your early 30s, if not still in your 20s, and
Good guess.
it seems like you're just starting off. So how did you transition, and did you actually have people that you looked up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my fourth year of university, I had a finance blog called Derailed Capitalism. And it would focus on a lot of macro, Canadian economic views. I would, it'd also look at maybe the Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, what they're doing. And as a result, one hedge fund manager messaged me, or he posted a comment, we started chatting, and he brought me on as an intern. I focused on the Japanese yen and what was going on in Japan at the time. They had a new prime minister, a new bank chairman, so things were changing there. I spent a lot of time researching, building this report. And then that hedge fund manager, he's kind of my mentor now, and he's been helping me through this journey. He has a lot of experience on the business side, setting me up with the right legal team, the right finance team, helping me get all the right structures in place so we can really grow, scale, and ultimately position the business for an exit. So we chat every month or two, and he's been very inspirational, helping me kind of take this business to the next level. And that's someone directly in my life who's really had an impact. And then on the digital marketing side, one of the main guys I follow is Russ Perry from Design Pickle.
Yeah.
And really learning from him, how can you take a traditional service model and productize it, which has been a lot of work on its own. As you know, in the SEO space, it's very difficult, it's very hands-on, it's very technical. Every business is different, so how can you build these standardized practices to really scale up?
That's amazing, man. The thought process behind an entrepreneur is completely different than the average, employee, right? So what goes on in your mind is completely different, and how you think so far ahead versus someone that's just doing it just to survive, right? And that's completely different. I love stories like that, right? So in terms of is this your first kind of entrepreneur business that you started, or has there been others? Because I know you mentioned that computer stuff, the burner, but the real business side of things, like My SEO Sucks, is that your first foray of business?
No, it would be our second business. Our first one, again, I mentioned it a bit earlier in the podcast, but it was called Our Paper Life. And we produced cardboard furniture products.
Okay, yes.
Again, I don't know how I got into that.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened organically there. But it was a really cool idea. The way I think I'm very macro focused, as you can tell, working at the hedge fund, focusing on country level risk versus individual stocks and equities and bonds. But we saw a huge, opportunity here where material costs were rising, shipping costs were getting very expensive, and people are, especially the millennials, becoming much more environmentally conscious, and they're kind of more aware, not just of how much of the specific product maybe impact the environment, but that complete cycle. And with cardboard furniture, it's a material resource that's extremely abundant in Canada, very low cost. And the manufacturing process is very clean. You're basically running a sheet of cardboard through a machine that's turning, cuts out the design. We can fold it, package it. It's 3 or 4 pounds, and we shipped it to the end user. And we could produce desks and shelves for $20, $25 shipped.
So is that business still around, or?
We sold that business.
Okay.
One of our business partners ended up buying us out. He was very passionate about it. He was an architect, and he did a great job designing these products. And for us, I think we got as much as we could out of it.
Gotcha.
We pivoted more to the B2B side.
Yep.
And started producing large scale orders and custom orders for enterprises and governments kind of across North America there. And it was a great, honestly, it was a great, first business. We learned so much. Well, I'm still learning today, but it was a great way to kind of jump in. And I would say kind of like almost like a low risk venture, as it wasn't too capital intensive.
That's amazing.
And it was a very creative idea that was easy to sell for the most part.
So in terms of like this SEO journey that you're in, is this just yourself, or did you work alongside someone to get started?
I worked alongside someone to get started.
Okay.
He's a great guy. He actually he had a book that just came out.
Okay.
A few days ago. He has a podcast. His brand is growing.
Nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to start the business, without him. Getting off the ground. It's really tough nowadays to, have a solo founder type business. So much that goes into it, just from, the marketing strategy, branding, operations, account management, finance, everything else. Then you have like HR issues, hiring, resources, et cetera, like the list never ends. So it's very difficult to kind of be a solo founder and be successful. I mean, with the exception of if you're experienced in the space, you raise capital, things along those lines, and can hire. But yeah, the two of us, we work side by side. We grew the business, and then recently he wanted to focus more on his writing and his career on that side. He's still an entrepreneur, building that up. And then I really wanted to focus on the business side here at my Seo Sachs.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So let me talk about like some of the challenges that you've kind of faced, because as an entrepreneur, it's never as easy as it sounds, right? Everyone always sees you as the business owner, successful and whatnot. So can you tell me some of the things that you kind of had to endure to get to where you are today? Maybe, some examples or some of the challenges, mistakes that you've made over the years?
Oh, we've made way too many mistakes. Every day it's a new thing we've kind of maybe shouldn't have done, or we ended up investing in an area that didn't turn out.
Yep.
What I think at the beginning, the biggest challenge in the SEO space in general, and we're getting away from that, but it's taken us a few years, is traditionally, if it's your firm, one is like kind of moving from that initial being a freelancer to having your own business.
Yep.
That's one pain point. You're doing everything. People are messaging you at 2 a.m, 5 a.m. They're throwing stuff at you, and the requests that I was getting when I started out,
yeah,
it ultimately nothing to do with SEO. It was like, it might be like IT related issues or some technical thing on the website that beyond the scope, or something I couldn't handle. But for me, being so customer focused and
yep,
doing whatever I can, I was kind of fixing everything. I was making recommendations on things that maybe weren't associated with SEO. So that brings on a whole bunch of other challenges, because then you get wrapped in and looped into all these different projects that you're not necessarily getting paid for. So that was one of the things I noticed as a freelancer at the beginning, and learning how to kind of manage the scope of work, when to say no, which is still a problem today with me. And that's kind of created some some issues and a lot of extra work on my end. And then making that adjustment from a freelancer to a business. You're still the guy, and you're still kind of ultimately everything flows through you at that point. But there's challenges with that. Even like my original clients still see me as that kind of freelancer and that go-to, and it's really tough. How do you balance? Like, you don't want to ever hand off a client ultimately, but it's kind of managing that process there. So that's been a challenge as well as we grow. But it's getting better as we kind of put the right processes in place. We put the team in place, and kind of have our team working directly with the clients. It becomes much more manageable there. But yeah, we've made awesome. a lot of mistakes. Kind of, like I said, adjusting from freelancer to a company, and then now we're kind of in that next phase where we're trying to transition more into like a tech-focused platform. And each step of the way, there's so many challenges, and there's so many things we've done wrong. We've kind of guessed what people are looking for versus maybe getting their feedback. That's I think some of the things we've gone through.
Yeah, every entrepreneur has these stories, right? And it's great to hear firsthand, because everyone sees these entrepreneurs as someone they always want to be, right? And it's never as easy as it looks and sounds. Everyone just sees you at that pivotal point where you're now speaking, or now you have a book, or you're running a successful agency or business, right? But they don't understand that it took you like 10, 20 years to get to where you are, right? It's very similar to like a sports analogy, right? Like, we're big basketball fans. They start when they're young preteens, right? Like young kids. Every day they commit, train, focus, right? Dedicate their livelihood to get to that pivotal stage of, whatever, college hoops or NBA, right? Like, it's the same thing as being an entrepreneur. Not everyone makes it, right? And it's great to hear that you're now successful and you're growing your agency. Advice. If you had some advice that you can give to people that are maybe just starting off, or that's been in it for a couple years and they don't know and they're stuck, what would you give them in terms of advice?
Well, there's a few things. I think the one question I get a lot, and it kind of speaks to your entrepreneur point, where everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone kind of sees the positives, but not the negatives of it, or like they see you when you're up, but not when you're down. And we've had to endure a lot. Like, I still work 80 to 100-hour weeks. I'm constantly, like, even when I'm not working, I'm thinking about work. It's on my mind. I'm in my like early 30s, and my hair is fully gray. So it's
at least you have hair. Look at
it. So everyone kind of glamorizes it. And what I do get, and when people do come up to me, maybe they're working, I have a lot of friends that are in finance and accounting, and, they're talking about, hey, I'm going to start a tech firm, or I'm doing this, or I'm going to do that. And at some point you do have to kind of pull the rug under it. But I think a lot of people want to kind of leave their jobs immediately and start a business. And I think if you can't start or grow a business while you're working full time, I think that's a great training exercise for, can you make it as an entrepreneur? Can you make it where, I'm working 8 or 9 hours a day at my full-time job. Am I able to come home at 5, be motivated to work till 2 a.m, get a few hours sleep, and then go back to my full-time job? And I think if you're not able to do that, or you're kind of making excuses for, I can't do this. If I worked on my project full-time, it'd be much more successful. Maybe that's true, but I think having to go through those difficulties and those challenges at the beginning are a great way to test the waters and see, is this for me? Because once you kind of are full-time with no backstop, like as an entrepreneur, if we lose a client, or expenses are too high, like, you have to make tough decisions, and maybe you have to work overtime. Maybe you have to work till 2 a.m. just to scramble and make sure that you're making ends meet.
No, these are great tips and advice that you're giving, because I hear so many people that they always want to be a business owner, right? They think it's so easy, and they have no idea where working for someone else is a cakewalk, right? Because you can tap in at 9 and leave at 5 or 6, and that's it, right? Like you have all the time in the world in terms of you can have hobbies, you can go out, travel, do things that you can do, right? But as an entrepreneur, that freedom doesn't exist until you're able to, when you start scaling, you have processes, people in place, different roles, responsibilities. Like letting go is very key. And it all depends on what you want to do with your business as well, right? But it's great that you're telling people like side hustle it, bootstrap it, figure out like if your income can replace what kind of you're getting in terms of as an employee, to see if it actually makes sense to leave. That makes total sense for a lot of these new starting business owners, right? Because they have no idea what they're getting into, and there's no longer benefits.
Oh,
All
yeah.
these things as a business owner, like all these things you kind of took for granted doesn't exist anymore. You gotta hustle and figure it out on how to do it yourself, right? So um tips, I know you mentioned advice and tips. Changes, I know these are things that you are really focused on, right? Like building your technology, software, or systems and processes, right? What have you seen over the last couple of years that really transformed your business and agency, and where do you see it going? Like, do you use technology as I know SEOers, like we're always on different softwares and platforms all the time, reading so many blogs and information, but we're different, right, than the
Yeah, yeah.
average business owner. So what have you used that really helped your agency grow? Like what kind of software and technology, tools in your kit?
So, yeah, no, for sure. About 3 years ago, we made the decision to, we're gonna like, my largest client at the time, I spent about 6 months breaking down everything I did for them.
Okay.
And, at the time they went from, they had a few lawyers on their team to they grew, 10x. They were number one for kind of every major keyword in the space across Ontario and a few other provinces that they were in.
Yep.
And so we knew we had a system that was working, or what I was doing was working.
Yep.
But how do you systemize that? How do you automate that? And how can you have someone else on the team kind of handle that same work at the same quality and level that you're doing it at?
Yep.
And I became obsessed with that. Like, how do we productize SEO? So we embarked on this journey. We spent and invested a lot of money into our platform, but we built our own custom platform
Yep.
that, as you know, in the SEO space, we're using, Ahrefs, SEMrush, all these different types of APIs. And so we built a platform that kind of connected everything. It handles the weekly reporting. It handles the automated. It tasks out all the link building for the month. It tasks out our entire SEO workflow for the month for each client. And one of the biggest challenges, I think, SEO on its own, it's not necessarily difficult. It's a lot of work, but there's so much research and there's so much training and videos out there that anyone could ultimately succeed at it. Where we had a problem is, how do you scale an agency, and how can you kind of knowledge transfer to your team in a very kind of simple, non-complex way? So for us, like as an agency, I think a lot of people, even when they're hiring an SEO firm, they're not necessarily maybe hiring the right agency. Maybe they like the person they're working with. Maybe they like the account manager. But without those tight operations, it is really difficult to succeed. And I think even for us, there's a technology component, which is like the custom technology that we've built. There's also all those SEO resources out there, like I mentioned, different software solutions and everything. But I mean, it really came down to how can we package that all together so anyone on our team can work on any project, can jump in, versus having a more kind of account manager model where you're really reliant on that one person who's the front facing for that organization. So for us, there's not any one piece of technology or software. We built our own. It connects with everything, but it's how do you take high-end SEO that's very labor intensive, and how can you scale that? Because even when you're hiring SEO people in general, it's tough to sniff out, who's really passionate about this, who is maybe they're just trying to, take short, I don't know, they're trying to basically cut corners. So by building really strong processes and workflows, that's been something we've been obsessed with. And how can we add to the team? They can jump in and start working on a campaign. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's
no,
I
it
think,
makes sense for
yeah.
me, but I know a lot of the audience members, like, you might not be familiar with like technology the same level as we do, right? Because we're subscribing to a lot of SaaS software to help us determine what strategy to implement, how to audit certain sites and figure out like what's wrong, how do you mimic, how do you transition and change, and pivot right quickly, because things are real time in this world that we live in. And for us, it's like these little tweaks and then mapping it out and, benchmarking it. And all these things are always, ongoing. And one change will have detrimental impacts on other factors, right? So it's just interesting to hear that you're always proactive. You're always looking at the big picture on how do you automate a software so that the average consumer or your staff, anyone you plug in, can take things on, at any time, right? I think the challenge there would be people have different skill sets and different levels of not just desires and passion, but their strengths, right? They might be introverts or extroverts, or personality might be completely different. So it might be a little bit more challenging, but it's all about the vetting of hiring as well, right? Where I'm not sure how large your team is, but when you get a good rhythm as to what that personality trait is that you want on board, and they're in alignment with your core values and what you want to do with the company and scale, I think that's more important in a grand scheme of things. But it's great to hear that you're using a lot of these technologies, creating APIs, and really like seeing what you can do with it to grow your business. Do you focus on any specific platforms to really help scale your business? Like besides your proprietary one, is there like certain, chat ones or email ones that you kind of use, like HubSpot or Trello or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably like most small businesses, we wouldn't be here without Slack.
Okay.
That's a great one. Our whole team uses it. Even our software integrates with it.
Yep.
It's fantastic. And I think out of the box, Slack is good. But when you figure out the right processes for your agency, it can be very productive and really help you grow and scale. Even little things, we use it for a lot of, we have our team announcements and people are sending jiffies all the time to each other, kind of boosting morale, which is great. Anytime a task is finished, it automatically goes into Slack and notifies, the appropriate team, whether it's the SEO team, the link building team, the content team. So it just keeps everyone in the loop. We use the channels almost religiously just to make sure, because like I said, one of the challenges as we're trying to kind of have a central team that anyone can kind of jump in, and we're centralizing it, having really good communication is fundamental to being able to offer the best quality service and results for a client, and also just making sure that everyone knows what's going on and everyone is kind of learning from each other constantly. So you can eventually, as we hire more people, we kind of throw them in these channels. We have a 2-week training program, and at that point we can quickly see what their potential is, and is this going to be the right fit for our agency.
That's awesome. In terms of like how you kind of started, right? I know we keep going back to that, but did you attend a lot of like networking events, or how did you go about getting some of your first quick wins in terms of like new customers, and how did you grow your agency? Because maybe a lot of these people on the podcast are listening as, how do I get started? Because that's the biggest challenge, right? How do you know to kind of quit your job, or know if this is it for you?
Yeah, I think looking back, it would be much easier now, with the kind of knowledge I know. I didn't network. That's something I've never really done before. I haven't gone to conferences, and it's something I was planning on doing more in 2020, but we know how that ended. My first clients were through referrals, and if you're doing good work, especially in digital marketing space, it's really tough to find good talent. In SEO, I mean, I get 30, 40 emails a day from SEO firms, all in specific countries, and everywhere else in the world for that matter. I see those every day. They don't work. And kind of like as I've grown more into this space, and I'm having a conversation with you right now, I'm part of a Slack channel, traffic think tank. And as I just talk with people more in the space, I don't necessarily consider networking in the traditional sense, like, going to conferences, going to presentations, but just having one-on-ones with people. It is networking, but just having one-on-ones and just saying, hey, I'm new to the industry, like let's chat. Or, hey, I have some experience in the financial space. I know you have a finance client, maybe I can provide some guidance, and vice versa. It really helps. Like, it's a small community, and if you're known for doing good work and you're putting the time into it to constantly learn, those opportunities are going to come up naturally and more often than you expect.
You made a great point, Chris, where networking, traditionally, a lot of people bring their business cards, the BNIs, or they go to these conferences, and all they want to do is start pitching and selling, right? You made a really good point where you want to just spot out some good people and really give value, right? And get to know people on a more personal level, because if they like you, then they will actually want to help you, right? And that's what I'm all about too. Like, relationships are so key in life, not just in business. And if you're someone that people know that you're actually there to help them in general, and not like to get something out of it, if you know what I mean. Like, people are different, right? And who gravitates towards being a giver versus being a taker, right? And the more you give, and in this whole SEO community, we're all givers here. I feel like, we're one of the smallest amount of, like, the breed out there in terms of entrepreneurs that actually want to help business owners succeed. And I'm at a different point in my life, and I'm not sure where you're at, but for me, it's like, I want to do good. I want to help impact a lot of good people out there. And I don't want to help people that are in it for themselves, or they only want money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not something I want to help and want to strive to help them succeed, right? So I totally get where you're coming from, Chris. Great point. So a couple of things I want to just end off here. In terms of like your passion now, and when you kind of first started, and how it's kind of transformed, what drives you and motivates you today?
For me, at least on the business side, I love scaling. I love seeing that growth. And when you're in it and you see your business, whether it's let's say 2x year over year, 3x year over year, you see things are moving without you in the middle. It's such an exhilarating feeling. It's like you've done it, you've built it. Like, this is your baby, and like you're seeing it kind of grow and kind of spread its wings without you necessarily kind of pushing it along. And it's a really great feeling. I'm always, I think I've constantly been chasing that for the better half of a decade now. But that's what really motivates me, like building these processes where the team can just come in and take it over. And then you can kind of work on the next thing. And then you see, holistically, like, you've built this organic process that can kind of take on its own.
No, that's awesome. So in terms of like, aside from business, so let's talk no business now. Um, some of the pillars that kind of molded you as who you are today. So growing up, did you live in Toronto? Like, did you have very close family ties? Like, what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Mississauga.
Okay.
My wife doesn't let me say that I grew up in Toronto. She calls
Okay.
me out. She's like, "No, you're on the border. It doesn't count." Because she grew up. She actually grew up. Her family is kind of located right around where we're living now, which is good. Has its positives there. Um, for me, I've always loved traveling. I
Mhm.
really think it's something important that if you can do it, especially when you're young, it gets. I'm sure you know what now. Having a kid, it gets tougher and tougher. Um, you learn so much, and you learn so much about different people, and I think it changes you as a person.
Yep.
Like you start thinking about things not just from your point of view, but from kind of everyone else's point of view, and that's played a large part. I remember going to my first trip going to Europe, and I was just amazed seeing everything there. How their culture is much different than it is here in Canada or Toronto, and then from there going to Japan and seeing how they interact, and you're really putting a concerted effort into kind of fitting in and trying to kind of embrace it as much as the locals do. It's just I think that's had a big impact is who I am as a person, and my wife and I were always trying to, not as much now, but whenever we have a chance, we're always trying to travel. And
That's
I think that
amazing.
was all. I think that was also one of the as we grow this business, everything we do is kind of focused around how can we make sure that we can still travel, we can still spend as much time together. That's a big part, having that kind of like that overall like mental health, taking those breaks. And our business kind of operates in that sense. Like our whole team is remote. We use as much technology as possible so everyone can still, you know, communicate and have that same sense of belonging and collectiveness and loyalty at the company. And that helps us meet our kind of like our own personal goals, travel, spending time together, and then just kind of spending time with friends and family.
That's amazing because that's what life is about, right? Like during times of crisis, business takes, the side, it goes behind and not as focused as what's really important in life, right? Your family, your friends, your relationships, um, people, right? You surround yourself in shelter, of course. So staying safe during this COVID-19, uh, new reality and norm that we're living in today. So I guess you mentioned your husband, you live in Toronto right now, health, family, business. Is there anything else that really resonates with you and where you want to take yourself? Like what kind of impact and legacy do you want to actually have in your life? Because as an entrepreneur, it's great to hear about these stories of when you're starting or if you've been doing it for 5 or 10 years, but do you see yourself doing this for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Or do you want to kind of slow down and kind of, take it easy afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
What's going to come next? I think as an entrepreneur, I can't speak for everyone, but I can't imagine not being an entrepreneur. I can't imagine having, like, even now, I feel guilty when I take a day off. Like, oh, I could be doing this. I could be doing this. Like, oh, what about this? Um, and I think, ultimately when, it comes to the next stage of our lives or, we exit out of this business, um, I can't imagine not doing something. I think I'd be restless.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find something, and I'm always trying to find new projects
Yeah.
and all these different make work things, which isn't always the best.
Yeah.
But I think I see, after this right now, I mean, we're enjoying where we're at with this business and we're growing it. Um, but again, at the end of the day, I think we have other passions that are near and dear to us. Like I really like I think with COVID and seeing everything that's going on, like what we're doing to the environment, seeing the beneficial kind of impacts of COVID with pollution down, um, and everything else that comes with that, like we're seeing some benefits environmentally, and I'd like to continue, you know, after COVID or after we exit this business, kind of do more charitable initiatives, something that can make a real difference in different communities.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that's amazing. And that's what I think people kind of gravitate towards after they kind of have everything they want, right? And you know, it's different, and it's a different life after you kind of feel like you've done what you can, right? Um, so it's great to hear. And you know, in terms of like community wise, I know you live in Toronto and you're a big Raptors fan. Hopefully, or is there
yeah,
a certain team that you really gravitate towards? Or
I was a season ticket holder for about 4 years for the
okay,
Raptors.
yeah,
Uh, I got rid of I was splitting with a friend who moved to Calgary last year,
okay.
so I didn't have tickets
Oh
for their
no!
winning season,
Are you kidding
and
me?
oh, I think about that all the time. I think about
You should
like
have just ate
game
it
seven
up. And
shot. Oh,
so I've been a season ticket holder for over 15 years. And
oh
last
wow.
year was obviously like the best season ever. And I couldn't miss any game. And usually I'm like all about playoffs, right? So during that month, everything goes behind, like business kind of slows down because I'm not really as focused, because you know you're a big fan, right? And it's the one time that Raptors actually was able to make something happen. So I'm glad that the NBA season will be kickstarting next month, or you know, early August, and we'll see what happens, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, really excited for that.
But now that I know you're local, we'll go to a game, we'll catch something for sure.
Oh,
uh,
awesome.
So tell some of the listeners how they can get a hold of your business, connect with you on a more personal level. Like, do you have any social handles?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's on the website, myseosucks.com. And like you said, for me, I love what I do. I love SEO. I'm passionate about marketing, and I'm always looking to like to help people who want to get into the space. I think the more people you can have relationships with in this space, it's going to help you. It's going to help them. It's going to help the community in general. And my email's on the website. Um, but yeah, get in contact with me. Shoot me an email if you want to like meet up, have a chat. I guess we can't really do coffee or lunch right now, but happy to jump on a Zoom meeting. Happy to share any wisdom or help in some way.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Chris. It was great to get to know you. We'll definitely get together once this virus kind of subsides, and we'll go for a game for sure. I
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
appreciate your time, and thanks a lot for all the insights and wisdom that you provided some of the audience members.
Yeah, my pleasure, John. Thanks very much.